World Slayer. That's what it's called, right? The gigantic
World
equipment.
Slayer.
Yeah,
Yep, World Slayer.
So the goal there was, and granted, looking back now, this is a bracket 4 deck. It was resource denial, it was mass land destruction, and I've always been just a sweaty little nerd about these things. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Thoughtcast regulars and newcomers alike, it is my privilege and honor to present to you episode 100 of the MTG Thoughtcast. We did it. We made it to 100. This is our 100th time sitting in these chairs talking about the wonderful game of Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. My name is Joseph. I'm one of the hosts here, and I would not be able to do this if it was not for the man across the screen or across your ears that I share a blood type with. It is John Kendall. John, welcome to episode 100, man.
I've got 100 episodes, but a problem ain't one of them.
That's right.
Hi there.
Yeah. We've had some problems, but not many these days.
Oh, yeah, we did. You're right. You're right, technically.
Not too many these days.
Remember we lost an entire episode for Lost Caverns of Ixalan?
We
remember
did.
That?
We did. We also lost a host over the years. we are here. We don't need to talk about that. Man, dude, it's been 100 episodes of sitting and talking about Commander, and I just, before we get into any of the goodness today, all the celebrations of the last 100 episodes, I just want to say, John, I'm so grateful to have you as my co-host on the show. It's been a privilege and an honor, and a vehicle to hang out with your brother in your 30s at least once a week is a privilege that I do not take for granted. So thanks for always sitting here and taking it with me, you know?
Awesome, and I've been so privileged to be a part of this as well. And I also just want to be thankful to everyone who has been a part of our community and this growth on our way to our 100 episodes. We're also inching incredibly close to our 2,000 subscribers as well. So, like, what an amazing crossover of anniversary dates, or just more like highlight milestones, I suppose. 100 episodes, 2,000 subs, so we are all here at the channel, myself, my brother, everyone part of our long-term community, all of you watching and listening. Thank you so much for wanting to be a part and listening in on the conversations that we've got. All things Magic, all things Commander.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a fun one. You mentioned we're coming up on a couple of milestones. May also marks our 3-year anniversary of starting the channel. So we got,
I know,
the stars have aligned on the MTG Thoughtcast of all of our different milestones. Episode 100, 2,000 subscribers, 3-year anniversary. It's been what a ride it's been to get here. But man, before we get into any more of the celebrations, as we dive into some of our favorite decks that we've made over the year, we figured that was the most appropriate way for us to celebrate a stretch of time, is to go back to when we started playing Commander up to now and just talk about our favorite decks that we've made, maybe prior to the channel, maybe during the channel. We got all that and more coming up today, but we do need to give a couple of quick shout outs. As John mentioned, shout out to all of you guys who are here watching. As I mentioned in the intro, whether you are here for the first time or you've been here for 3 years, we appreciate every single one of you for being here, sticking with us, and hanging out with us so much. If you want to join the Thoughtcast community and get in on all of the goodness that we have for you, brew some decks, play some games, share some memes, it's all linked in our Discord down below. That's the easiest place to get a hold. You have direct access to John and I on our Discord. While you're down there, if you'd be so kind as to give some likes, comments, and subscribes, it helps grow the channel even further for the next year, for the next 1,000 subscribers, for the next 100 episodes. We've got, I want to see, I'm not stopping anytime soon. Just to be very clear about this, I have a lot of fun doing this, so I'm looking forward to the next couple hundred episodes that we've got under our belts here. But if you want to see all of those, easiest way to do that is to subscribe and get the bell on, hit those notifications, hype the video, whatever that does. There's all.
I still haven't found. I don't know.
It's like a leaderboard thing.
It seems to only be on mobile as well, which is very weird. Huh. I don't know.
I don't know. It's like super likes. You can hit all of those good YouTube buttons down below. Help support the channel. We've got an incredible offer for you guys as well from our friends over at Heavy Play. They are sponsors of our show here. They are our absolute favorite Magic accessories. They are our favorite playmats, deck boxes, dice boxes, and sleeves. Coming to you from heavyplay.com/MTG Thoughtcast. That'll get you 10% off of your entire order with them. You can get yourself a sweet ETB playmat or an RFG deck box. All their stuff is pristine. I love all of their products. I was a fan before they were a sponsor of the show. So I'm a longtime fan of what they're doing. 10% off of your entire order if you use code MTG Thoughtcast at checkout, or as I mentioned, go to heavyplay.com/MTG Thoughtcast. That's our friends at Heavy Play. Well, John, 100 episodes, 100 cards. That's a commander deck, isn't it? Why don't...
Does that make us partner commanders?
We are. We're absolutely partner commanders. Definitely. We would have partners with, for sure. None of this vague partner stuff. It's exclusive, me and you. We would have partners with... what would your color be, John? What do you think?
Oh, I mean, you know me. It would be Azorius, 100%.
You'd be Azorius. Mine would maybe be Boros. We'd be like a Jeskai partner pair.
Ooh,
I like that. Let's just reminisce a little bit while we're feeling nostalgic here. Why don't we talk about our first commander decks and how far we've come from there? Tell me about the first commander deck you ever built, John.
Oh, absolutely. So what I want to preface going into kind of just talking about this reminisce episode that we decided to do here, like, this is not going to be us covering our entire history on, like, you know, the things that we have done and participated in Magic. We've talked about a little bit on various other outlets here on the channel, whatever. What our general focus for today, for this episode, is just going to be is just sort of just like stretching our history of some of our most favorite and icon pieces that have kind of helped like shape and define the sort of commander building philosophy that both you and I have established over the years in getting started with Commander. And just prior to the show here, I was asking you about this as well because I wasn't 100% sure on that, but I think we've talked on here before about ones that we called out as our first Commander decks, but I actually wasn't sure for the one that you had mentioned and the one you will bring up a little bit later, but I actually had a deck prior to my Brago deck, which I will be talking about Brago in just a little bit.
Arcane.
But I think that makes me think here that while you technically introduced me to Magic, I guess I introduced you to Commander, I suppose.
That seems about right.
In that regard.
Because we both got into it by, and we've told this story before, but, you know, episode 100, might as well tell it again. We were looking for NES games and came across a game store in our tiny little hometown. And the guy at the counter was a very smart salesman and said, I don't sell video games, but I would love to teach you guys how to play Pokemon. And got us into the card game, which I could be a bit disparaging about the gameplay in Pokemon, but it's having a bit of a moment right now, so I'm going to give it what it is. It's not for me. We ran out of it pretty quickly. But, of course, there were some Magic players at the card shop as well. And they pretty quickly took us under their wings, took me under their wings especially, and I started learning to play Magic via the Gate Crash event deck. Is that what it was called? The standard, like, it was the red-green Blood Rush deck. You would just buy the thing and then you can play in a standard tournament or whatever it was. And so I started playing that, and they were like, but you got to get into Commander. And I was like, no, I'm never going to do that. Got you into Magic. You were like, I'm going to get into Commander. And that got me into Commander, and that's been what has sustained us for all of these years. 15 years now?
Something to that degree, yeah. But you know what happened is actually I started learning Magic a bit off of you, and then I took that building idea and found a group of people at the college that I was going to. I went to community college for a couple of years, and we had a in-between classes lunch group of people. Like, you all know how school stuff is. You've got that back corner table of people who are just like, oh, they're the nerds. They're playing their nerd game or whatever. And I got slowly consumed into that barrage of people. I'll have a story with that in a little bit later, but I learned that they were generally Commander people, because at that time, Commander was just only starting to kind of pick up in speed as far as popularity, right? Like, people were playing it prior to the 2011 precons, and then the 2011 precons themselves came out. I think actually even at that point when I was in college, the 2013 ones were out, and I think the 2015 ones were coming new as well. You know, those that was those monocolor ones.
I was gonna say, I remember the monocolors as my first precons.
That leads me to the point that I'm getting here is that one of the first decks I built, you know, because I believe I bought that mono blue one. So I took pieces from that Teferi mono blue deck, combined it with other cards that I had started to collect over the years. Truth be told, my very first Commander deck was Trauma Kratos.
Yeah, the big boy.
I loved this big boy. He just holds a special place in my heart for me, just because, like, newer player reads a card like this that, yes, we can evaluate this now as like, oh my god, what a trap this is. But I would like to argue that Trauma Kratos has just such a unique ability to him that no other card with this type of qualities about it does what he does. For anybody unfamiliar with the card, Trauma Kratos is 3 and double blue for a legendary Kraken. He's an 8/8, originally printed as a rare from Born of the Gods. He has got 2 abilities: Hexproof unless he's attacking or blocking, and Trauma Kratos can't be blocked unless all creatures defending player controls blocks it. Special note on there that if any creature that player controls doesn't block this creature, it can't be blocked. That's not worded in such a way that, like, you know, traditional more cards we see nowadays, they're printed in a way that says, oh, these kind of things are unblockable unless they're blocked by all creatures able to do so. No. That does not say that. So what I was trying to do with this original build of the deck and like big brain ideas was like, oh, we're in mono blue. If I just slap a single creature my opponent controls with a card like Claustrophobia, and there's a whole variety of these blue auras that do this kind of thing, but essentially one of these cards that says a creature is tapped and it does not untap during its controller's untap step. What that results in is Trauma Kratos seeing that, oh, they control one creature that is not able to block me. Guess I'm unblockable now.
Yeah, I honestly, I still think that the idea for that deck is very cool. But boy, how power creep has affected, like, you bring up Claustrophobia. I was like, man, that Claustrophobia is 3 mana to tap a creature down permanently. And now we have like Sleep Magic from the Final Fantasy set that's just a single mana tap down something permanently until it takes damage, which it's not going to. Just such a cool, like, the concept of that deck is still really cool and has just power crept into the place where it's not viable anymore, but it is still like a banging idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a huge kick out of like trying to make, like, you know, at the time, untraditional blue. You know, you don't expect blue from like the 2015 era of Magic to be a big stompy creature that wins by commander damage. That was the idea that I went into brewing that deck.
Well, it's such a, you almost tapped into the original ideology of Commander, which was you hit with this thing 3 times and you win the game. And then you just hedged your bets into finding a way to guarantee that thing hit. So, you know, if you had a way to give it double strike or, you know, boost up its power, you were just playing mono blue Voltron with like a big dumb Voltron already commander. Just a really sweet one. That Hexproof, I think, is still sweet. Man, Trauma Kratos is an uncommon now. They've downgraded our boy to an uncommon.
I know. It hurts my soul, but he will always hold a special place in my heart as John's first baby's commander deck.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, my first commander deck was around the same time as well. Yours was Born of the Gods. Mine was from Conspiracy, which I think was the first set that you and I were both really in for it together with Commander in mind. Because our first like real set that we played together was Theros. Because like I said, I got in at the end of Return to Ravnica block, and then you got in at the beginning of Theros block. So that time is incredibly nostalgic for us. And then right after Theros was Conspiracy, Because it was Theros, Conspiracy, and then Cons of Tarkir, right?
Conspiracy may have fallen in between Cons of Tarkir. Let me see here.
Fact check me here, but it was all around that time.
Yeah.
We'd started going to a new LGS. They were doing like more events were actually firing. So the Conspiracy set was one that we were able to like go and actually draft and play in the Conspiracy draft events, which landed us with these honestly, I think they hold up still, incredible legends from Conspiracy. Conspiracy was almost the first like Commander Legends set in a way where it was a draft set that had a focus on multiplayer and had a bit of a legendary creatures sub-theme to it. Obviously, you would draft the set and then you would play in 4-player games. So it was like mini command. It was Commander Legends before Commander Legends. I got a Marchesa the Black Rose, which was at the time one of like the chase mythics from that set. You found yourself with a Brago, King Eternal, which was rare at the time or mythic?
Yeah, Brago is rare. He's always been rare.
For sure. And Marchesa was the mythic from the set as well. So there was this and that was, we found ourselves both building these commander decks. So Marchesa the Black Rose was my first one. It's just she's so fascinating to me. Like all of the different keywords on her. I'm going to pull it up just so I make sure it's right. Marchesa the Black Rose was a 4 mana, so it was 1 in Grixis, blue, black, and red. This is where it all started for me. This is my villain origin story, was opening. Oh, you know what? I think she was actually rare in Conspiracy. Nope, mythic. 4 mana, 1 in Grixis for a 3/3. Human wizard, and wizard is an important part there. She has dethrone. So this was the main mechanic from Conspiracy was dethrone. So whenever this creature attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So now we're in Grixis +1/+1 counters, which was awesome. Other creatures you control have dethrones. All of your creatures can get anthemed just by attacking the player with the highest life. And then whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. She was crazy. I still think there is like viable reasons to play Marchesa the Black Rose because there's just nothing else that does what she does. And I was just so taken by how fascinating of a card. The art on the card is incredible. Marchesa, an incredible character. It just 100% of it took me and was like, this is going to be my first commander deck. I set out to build it. And at the time, it was very bad, but there was cool things that you could do, like threaten effects. If you could threaten something and then attack with it, like a card like Threaten, or what's another example?
For specifically in Grixis, this one, Slave of Bolas.
Slave of Bolas was awesome. Mark of Mutiny was awesome. Mark of Mutiny was the best one because it was gain control of a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it, it gains haste until end of turn, or gain control until the end of turn. It gains haste, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So you would threaten these creatures, attack with them, and then sacrifice them to like Viscera Seer or Carrion Feeder. Both still incredible sacrifice outlets. They still have not outclassed the vampire or the zombie there. The way that Marchesa's worded, it says that if a creature you control dies, return it under your control. It does not require you to own that card, or it does not return under its owner's control. So you could get really mean and use threaten effects as removal and permanent mind controls on creatures in that deck. This also led me to our first house ban of Death Cloud, because I decided to be extra dirty and throw in Smallpox, Pox, and Death Cloud as my like board wipes in the deck. Oh, and World Slayer, that's what it's called, right? The gigantic
World Slayer.
Yeah,
World Slayer.
So the goal there was, and granted, looking back now, this was a bracket 4 deck. It was resource denial, it was mass land destruction, and I've always been just a sweaty little nerd about these things. But you would, so Death Cloud was the best of them because it was X black black black. Each player discards X cards, loses X life, sacrifices X creatures, and sacrifices X lands. So you just essentially restart the game. John hates it. So I literally do not play this card anymore because it was house banned.
We literally had to banish you to Tennessee because you kept degenerately destroying us.
Well, you just did not have any counter. At that time, we were so new. We didn't know how to metagame. It was just like I got the powerful cards, which meant that I would win the games, that I would cast Death Cloud. But with Marchesa specifically, if I had counters on my creatures with like Unspeakable Symbol was perfect in that deck. I feel like that's what really introduced me to Synergy. Because one of the downsides of Dethrone is that if you have the highest life, Dethrone does nothing. They've since fixed that with things like Sword Coast Sailor and other, like when you attack an opponent who has the most life, you get a benefit from it, so that even if you have more life than everybody, you still get the benefits from it. But Marchesa and Dethrone required a little building around, so you kind of had to sacrifice your own life total quite a bit. Unspeakable Symbol was perfect because the 3-mana enchantment, you pay 3 life and you put a +1/+1 counter on something. So that was everything the deck wanted to do. So I got really introduced to Synergy. You do that, you Death Cloud, all of your creatures had counters on them. You'd essentially restart the game except with all of your creatures in play. So it created inevitability that led to game wins. But man, that deck was down and dirty. It could scrap, I would say. There was plenty of ways, like if something came back with a +1/+1 counter on it, you could then sacrifice it again and continue these loops on everybody's turn, because it was the amount of times I had to say, actually, at the end of your second main phase, I'm going to sacrifice a creature so that it would come back on the end step.
The thing that just continues to tick me off about this Marchesa in specific, she triggers herself.
Yeah.
Like, why does she recur herself if she's got a counter? That is so... I'm gonna hold that one in. This card just ticks me off so much.
Dude, it's busted.
Not your fault, but I think you contributed as far as your deck is concerned. Now, she's an excellent card.
Yes.
Very strong, powerful legend.
Obviously, she's been a popular one as well, as they've printed 2 more Marchesas since then. Queen Marchesa, which is arguably better. It's not Grixis, it's Mardu, but it is arguably a better card with the Monarch and making 1/1s with Death Touch. Like, it's just she works in and of herself and doesn't require as much build around. And then a sneaky cameo on Invasion of whatever the Fiora, right?
Yep.
Yes,
you got
Fiora. Nailed it. Invasion of Fiora, which is also a great card. It's the battle that board wipes and flips into Marchesa that removes counters from things. So just sweet cards. And this was... I do think that if I had picked a lower power commander to get into, I don't know if commander would have stuck as much for me, because this solidified my the player archetypes of this solidified my Johnny brain of I need synergy in my deck. I need engines that work. I need value engines. I need recursion engines. It taught me how to use the graveyard. This was just intro to commander for me, was learning all of the pieces of it all at once.
Yeah. So back over to me then in that regard to kind of counterimpose and be in that same mindset as you. I picked up my own synergy piece and one of my personal favorite cards of all time, also from Conspiracy. Yes, we've dodged around a little bit here, but this is time to talk about Brago finally.
Yes.
I've brought up about Brago, my precious baby boy, my spirit king. Long may he reign, down with the false queen. Brago is excellent, and I kind of, in the same vein as you, there hit a point with my original build of the deck that it was just so toxic, whereas, so you went the mass land destruction route, and one of my earliest conceptions for Brago ended up being the stacks route.
Yes.
And that's in the opposite of you. You made me a despiser of Death Cloud, and I, in turn, made you absolutely despise Stasis. I despise
Stasis, and I still wince a little bit when I see a Strionic Resonator to this day. It's not even a good card anymore.
It's only good with Brago, basically. Yeah. Brago himself is 2 white and a blue. Legendary Spirit. Spirit Noble is the most recent versions, but from original Conspiracy, he was just a spirit. 2/4 with flying. Then when he deals combat damage to a player, you exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, and then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's controls. So just like the floor there is your creatures kind of pseudo have vigilance. The creatures that he blinks out, they don't even have to be the ones that go into combat with him. And then if he connects, you get to choose anything to blink out and in. So like some of the most powerful was obviously creatures with enters and leaves battle effect triggers, but also your mana rocks. So like if you used mana rocks for the turn to cast your spells, Brago connects, he blinks them out, blinks them in, boom, you've got all of your mana reset for the rest of the turn. One of my favorite things to blink in and out, and this is also like another tie-in to one of my favorite things, right? Like Brago is one of my favorite like legendary creatures. This is where I ended up having my love for Tezzeret, as a matter of fact, because I had Tezzeret the Seeker, and still do. I have Tezzeret the Seeker in that deck because you can blink Planeswalkers with Brago as well. So like you do their activated abilities during your main phase, a connect with Brago, he blinks them out, blink them in, you're at your second main phase, you get to do those triggers again. And like at the time, being able to do a Planeswalker on repeat, because like Planeswalkers were seen as quite a bit more powerful back in 2015, you know? Like
Yes.
They were printed more rarely amongst all of the sets, and like the ones that were there, we weren't swimming in answers to solve them.
Yeah.
So a commander like Brago, who had the ability to take these Planeswalkers out and in and be able to do their abilities again, it was so powerful. Tezzeret the Seeker in specifically being excellent because like the turn he comes down into play, his middle -X can tutor any one of the two combo pieces that you're missing. Brago connects, comes back in, grabs you the other piece so that you're ready to go infinite combo on the next turn. The combos with Brago is what Joseph was talking about, Strionic Resonator being basically the big one. If you have enough mana rocks to go into Strionic Resonator activated ability, which states that you you make a copy of a triggered ability that you control. Brago's combat damage trigger being on the stack, you Strionic Resonator, copy that. The copy resolves all your things that you choose, exit, re-enter. The original is still sitting on the stack. You can copy it again. So you get infinite blinks. And then obviously from there, it's just anything else you're sitting on that made it work. Like a lot of my favorites was like Altar of the Brood. I put things that like draw infinite cards in it, and then you just win in your second main phase with like a Laboratory Maniac. One of the most stupid is actually one of my favorites that I bought for the deck that has a Leaves effect. It's the card Nevermaker from Morningtide.
Dude, this deck was disgusting. I don't want to hear anything about how Marchesa was degenerate.
Yeah, and then Nevermaker, it said that when it would leave play, you put a non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. So anything your opponents had, if you've got the infinite blink going on, just stack them on top of their library so you know precisely what they're drawing for the next 6 turns or whatever. And this was also before the commander tuck rule. So you put somebody's commander like 6 cards below a bunch of other things and just like, whoop, sorry, I guess that commander's just gone now.
Yeah, did you remember when we would just play Spell Crumple because it was like, I win the game?
Dude, Chaos Warp had value.
Dude, yeah. I still think that Chaos Warp is a good card. I still think that Chaos Warp has its place in mono red decks, but that's it.
Exactly.
Every other color has ways to deal with things now, but you're right. Chaos Warp's original value came from being able to tuck a commander in. And then you'd get the glorious times where someone would Chaos Warp your commander, and then you'd flip your commander off the top anyway, and it's like, hey again.
Surprise. And then, yes, I ended up having some Staxy stuff in here as well, because with Brago's ability to blink permanents of my own, like out and in, something like Stasis itself that says that players skip their untap step. Brago, if he's untapped from his previous combat, just goes in, blinks out all of your mana rocks that were tapped, brings them right back in. I can continue to do stuff for the turn. Nobody else gets an untap step. Yep. Profit.
Yeah, you were regularly stasis locking me in 1v1 with your Brago deck as I was just like,
Static Orb,
pay 3 life, put a counter.
It was a fun deck. I do still personally, I was actually just talking to you prior to the start of this show. I really went looking around. I'm very positive my original copy is still in the house here somewhere. I just wasn't able to find it for this recording session, but I know he's still around, or at the very least, the deck is still sat right back over there. Now, he is on the agenda for this year to get a revamp because he hasn't really had an upgrade path in... Oh, gosh, I probably haven't put new cards in him in probably the last 3 years or so. So, like, his overall power right now is a little bit lower than what we see in traditional Commander today. So, like, hold me to this, gang, that some point before the end of this year, we're going to do a deck showcase with Brago. We're going to work on this together on upgrading him to get up to the current level of Commander.
I love it. Boomer Commander. Boomer Commander, hey, fellow kids. It's just Brago with a backwards hat.
How do you do, fellow Blink enjoyers?
Yes. Yeah, it's funny because, like, I talk a lot about the charm of Commander and why we still play this format, even though it's, like, solved. CEDH is the solved version of Commander, but the reason why the bracket system exists and the reason why Commander has overtaken essentially every other format in the game as the most popular and the longest lasting format is just that it's a charming format that, like, you get to play things like Brago that you would not get to do elsewhere, and you get to do these neat little chains, like maybe outside of like Canadian Highlander, which is, Commander minus the Commander. Don't come at me, Canelander players, I know it's different, this is for the sake of brevity. But yeah, the singleton format with a deck building restriction allows you to do things like Marchesa and Brago, and it enraptured us as, I was probably 15, you would have been like 17, or I guess if you were in college already, you'd have been 18 or 19 at that point, but yeah, it's kept us involved in it because it's so charming. And you can, in 2026, you can go back to Brago and you can go, how do I make this work still? And see how the different Blink strategies work, because he's also is very unique. Like, I think the only card that they've really printed like Brago since he came out is Urian, which it is not as good, maybe?
It's definitely harder, I can tell you that much, because like his trigger just simply being an enters the battlefield type of effect and costing more mana. Yeah, he's bigger, but like there's pro and con to both.
Yeah, but you could just put like Steel of the Godhead onto Brago and then you're good to go. You're like ripping.
Yes, sir.
Or like the one that gives you pro creatures. I'm digging back through all of the
Holy Mantle. Yep.
Yes, I'm digging back through all of the things that my like trauma response has sectioned off and forgotten. I'm like, wait a second, Steel of the Godhead ripped in that deck.
Yep.
That's so funny.
Yes, sir.
That's so funny. Well, I'm curious if you remember what my next deck after Marchesa was, because it was a left field.
Let's think here. So we're at the era of Magic that we're kind of at like Khans of Tarkir, moving into Magic Origins a little bit, and then the start of the Gatewatch story. I
went backwards.
Was it a command?
I went backwards.
You went backwards. Okay.
Yes.
What block was it from?
Lorwyn.
Oh, Reaper King.
It was the Reaper King after that. Yeah. So that was my again, the path of degeneracy led me from Grixis +1/+1 counters, steal your stuff, mass land destruction, to 5 colors, of course, which at the time 5-color decks were significantly worse than they are now. Like it's pretty easy to do 5-color in a clean way. This was my answer to playing a 5-color deck. Was the Reaper King, which is 5 mana, 1 of each color. Any of those colors can be paid with 2 generic mana, or 2 of any color. So he's cost 5, but his mana value is 10. Can be played entirely colorlessly, but has a commander identity of all 5 colors. It's a 6/6. All other scarecrows you control get +1/+1, and then whenever another scarecrow comes into play under your control, destroy target permanent. So I looked at this and I said, scarecrows, how about mirror? And I was playing this as a 5-color mirror deck using cards like Conspiracy, which at the time was about the only option to switch a creature's creature type from one to another. I'm pretty sure that Conspiracy switches as compared to something like the tree. What's the new one? I always forget the name of it.
Maskwood Nexus just makes it all types.
Exactly.
Creature cards you own that aren't in play, creature spells, and creatures you control are the chosen type. Yeah,
yes.
so they don't.
So it just
they don't
hard
retain.
shifts.
They don't.
So this was a deck that was using like Mirror Matrix. I remember I had a doubling cube in this deck. It was Mirror Matrix, Mirror Battlesphere, Genesis Chamber, like all of these things that just made a billion mirror. Man, this deck was so much fun. And then the goal was just to find a Conspiracy as quickly as possible to change your mirror into scarecrows, play down the Reaper King, and then make a billion mirror and just nuke all the permanents in play except for yours. It was so fun and so bad. It was objectively a horrible deck. It's actually, I think, where I grew distaste for 5-color decks, because I was like, you kind of have access to everything, but also none of it works really well. Again, this was also like 2012, 2013 at the time. So it was not a great time to be building 5-color. You either started with like half of your life total because all of your lands did damage to you, or you started on turn 0 when everyone started on turn 1 because all of your lands come into play tapped. Because at the time it was like gates. That was your way to do it without Amulet of Vigor. It was just like play gate, pass. The tricolor lands at the time were good too, like the like Crumbling Necropolis and Friends. All of those like
I think the big ones back in our day were the brand new temples from Theros.
That's right.
ETB Scry, like those were actually seeing play back then.
Yes. It's also wild to me that those are still being printed at rare. Do you agree with that? These should be uncommon.
I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest with you, because like, I don't even really have a good philosophy that, to be perfectly honest. Like, uncommon would probably screw up a limited environment, I'd say.
Really?
I think so, yeah. Because, like, the ones that they print at common who have abilities on them to scry or draw cards, those are printed on the card themselves, like activated abilities of, like, 4 generic mana or requiring colored mana to activate those things. So, like, they must really have a philosophy on what mana cost is equal to what amount of scry, and being on a land probably lower than rare probably screws up a limited environment too much.
That's probably fair. I just feel like we're in, like, Murders at Karlov Manor kind of ruined tapped lands that do anything, because if they're printing temples at rare, which are non-fetchable, enter tapped and scry 1, and also at rare, you have typed dual lands that enter and surveil 1. So there's a huge gap there between the rare surveil lands and the rare temples. But yeah, at the time, the temples were great. There also was, like, I remember City of Brass, Reflecting Pool, Mana Confluence had just been printed. So that was like an excellent card. So you just had access to these.
And fetch lands were on the way in the next set.
That's right.
Like that Cons block had the fetch lands again.
Yeah, so it kind of became easier. But again, part of the reason why I built the Reaper King as a mirror deck was that it didn't require all 5 colors all the time. It realistically was probably a 3-color deck. That just had, like, I think the only black card in the deck was Conspiracy. There was no reason to be playing anything else. There was a handful of scarecrows. You had, like, Pila Pala. Pila Pala? Pala Pila.
Yep, you're right.
Pila Pala.
Pila Pala.
There was a handful of changelings that were good at the time. So there was little things like that made the deck actually sing and actually work. But it was mostly a mirror deck that was like, let's just go big with mirror, play a mirror Battlesphere. And I would say this is where I learned to love artifact decks, which really came into play, as we mentioned earlier, with the monocolored precons that came out, because that Duretti precon, the monocolored, mono-red Duretti precon came out very soon after I built the Reaper King, and I just shifted straight into that. I said sayonara to the Reaper King until the new Reaper King recently has retaken me and brought me back. But man, that was like a fun little burst that I had with OG 5-color Reaper King.
That's amazing. we now must have been in a familiar sort of like building direction, because like the next one I want to talk about was my own introduction into 5-color, and another one of my great loves that most everybody here on the channel should know. That like I've got a couple different attributes of me as a person. I like called the Oracle because I know a lot about the card rules and gameplay, and I am known as the Sliver guy.
Yep.
You all know that slivers are just like another one of my pride and joys as far as like a kindred. They are my favorite shared kindred creature types. And from back in the day, finding out that cards brand new printed were ones like Sliver Hive Lord, that for 5 mana, you give your whole board indestructible. Like,
Dude, yeah, because that was M14, wasn't it?
M15.
15, right.
Yep. But slivers were in M14 as
That's
well.
right.
This is how I began to start to love them, is that like unlike old school Magic players who knew slivers from the Weatherlight, Tempest, and Time Spiral days, my introduction to slivers were, yes, these butt ugly Predator ones.
The Predator
technically.
slivers. The Predator rebrand slivers. That didn't work.
It's so funny, honestly, going back and kind of doing the research on it, that like the ones that were printed as part of M14 were given that like creature type overhaul. And then the M15 ones, they must have had the means to be able to go back and get some changes to the artwork. Because if you look at like original artwork on something like Sliver Hive Lord, he looks kind of close to this sort of Predator vibe that the newer slivers were going for, but he still also has the hook hands that traditional classic slivers have. If you actually also look at the artwork from that same set of Sliver Hive, the slivers that are hanging out in all the little holes up on there, those have the traditional beak, nose, hook claw to them as well. So like they knew that they were working on the sliver change to get them back to looking more traditional. So it was just kind of fascinating to sort of see this blend of the two art styles. And you know, I'm going to be absolutely bold here and put it on record that I actually don't hate the sliver redesign or like the M15, M14 ones. Like, I actually think they look kind of cool. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm glad they went back to the OG because that feels more landmark. But I also, maybe it's just the cloud of nostalgia for us is M14, M15. But I also like the Predator vibe. Like, I think it was cool. It made them feel... OG slivers look goofy. That is like objectively true. Like the little like silver hooks with the hook hand, like that's goofy. The Predator ones were like scary. Like these were like scary looking art and cards. Like the bone. What was the one that gave double strike?
Bone Scythe.
Bone Scythe sliver. Like that's a terrifying card. And it
have you ever seen the promo one where he's got like he's doing like the like Wakanda thing with his claws? Like, oh, that thing is so sick looking, dude.
Yeah. So it was I see what they were trying to do, and it was cool, and I did like it. But I am glad that they're back to the OG with like the Modern Horizon slivers as well, which are
precisely
so much better than the M14, M15 ones.
Yeah, but like here was the issue is that this is why they had to go back and start doing some of these artworks, because like if you want my another honest opinion as far as slivers is concerned, some of the ones that were printed as part of M14, M15, those are some of the most powerful slivers they've ever printed. I would say the only other ones, barring the legendaries, the only other ones in modern times that have even come like close to feeling that powerful was Cloud Shredder from the Modern Horizons ones. But like you talk like M14, you've got Gale Rider sliver that like a single blue mana and all your team flies. Like, what are you talking about with that here? One of my favorites at Uncommon that I never get to work in the actual deck itself. He never gets to stick. But one of my favorite Uncommon ones from M15 was Constricting Sliver.
Okay.
Constricting is 5 and a white for the 3/3, and he gives slivers you control that when they enter the battlefield, you may exile target creature an opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield.
Yes, they're all fiend hunters.
They're all fiend hunters now. It's just like, oh, that just screamed so cool to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really sick. Was this also where they printed Mana Weft Sliver?
That was
Mano.
Yes,
There's two of them.
No. Mana Weft was M14. You are correct. Yep,
Yeah.
Mana Weft. Gemhide was the old
Time
one
Spiral.
from one of from the Urza blocks.
Oh, interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah, Time Spiral I don't believe had the Mana Sliver. Time Spiral had some of the other ones. Mostly in like Naya and Black were most of the Time Spiral-y ones. But again, I didn't get to really like this was one of the first deck archetypes that really encouraged me to start going back through Magic's history, you know, because things like Brago, Tromacratus, I glazed by my Surak Dragonclaw deck as well, a little bit as well. I've talked about that one in extent as well, so I'm not going to go into it here, but like those decks kind of just got built off of the cards that I owned at the time.
Yes.
Slivers, learning more about them this was one of the things that kind of drew me in to start learning about the history of the game. No other card or creature type really kind of drew in that interest to start learning about the overall history of the game that we are playing, while at the same time also getting me this fantastic commander deck that again I still own to this day. Now there was a period where I had the Slivers built. I decommissioned them for a little while, and then basically when the Commander Masters deck came out, it came back out of retirement, and I've got it back together as a deck once again now. But yeah, from back in the day, getting this collection of the M14, M15 ones naturally through being able to buy that product as it was on shelves, and then being able to go through and buy cards at like my game store and online or whatever, and starting up this collection of one of Magic's longest running creature types. This is just why it has been so cool and fascinating and one of my favorite loves as far as Kindred strategy is concerned.
Yeah, man, I love it. I didn't realize until this moment that we both went from our OG commander decks to a 5-color creature type focused commander deck. Yours was just more traditional Kindred style. Mine went into like janky robots. And then we've both landed. But as we wrap up the episode and as we start to land this plane here on our 100th episode, I would love to know, and I'll share mine first, since I'm kind of in turn order here, of just your favorite deck that you've built since then. So we obviously there was plenty of time after those moments that led to us now having a show. We do our podcast. It's been 3 years, 100 episodes. We've played a lot of Magic. We've built a lot of decks from that time to this point. I've decommissioned a lot more decks than I currently have built. So there is plenty. I mean, I probably built 60 decks over the years, and at least played them once or twice before deciding to keep them, or do they get a permanent spot in the deck, or do I put them in the deck graveyard and move on from them? But I still think my favorite deck that I have ever built, that is currently in limbo, it is loosely decommissioned. I need to revamp it because I kind of lost the plot a little bit on my upgrades. But this Togo Kesket is I love partner commanders. I've loved Togo since he was printed. I wanted to find a way to make him work. Togo Kesket is a Rakdos landfall deck. And it was early days of our podcasting when I started building this deck. And I've loosely referred to it as, in big air quotes, it's a landfall deck, I swear. Which is just, I've fallen in love. And maybe you can see from like OG Marchesa being a Grixis +1/+1 counters deck to 5-color Reaper King being a 5-color mirror deck that wants to turn into Scarecrows. The thing I love most about Commander is doing like weird off strategies and trying to make them work, because you get the element of surprise every time. When you sit down with a Rakdos landfall deck that is not a green landfall, because green landfall is easy to do. You've got Aisi, you've got Tatyova, you've got those ones. Green Simic especially. When you flip that coin into, I'm just going Rakdos. Togo is a 3-mana 2/2 Goblin Artificer that when a land enters the battlefield, so landfall, make a rock. And a rock is it's an equipment token that has Equips for 1 and 1 tap, sacrifice the rock. This creature deals 2 damage to any target. So you have to equip it and then pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice the rock to shock somebody. That is the worst thing that the rocks do. The best thing that they do is just sit there as actual rocks. Casket is the partner that I landed. The OG deck, if you remember, the idea for this was Francisco and Togo. And the hope was give Francisco the rock and then throw it, and then Francisco would trigger to then explore and draw more lands to play more of them. It was just too...
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. The original plan for the deck was Togo and Francisco, but it just required so much mana to equip and then throw the rocks that it just didn't do anything else. It was either just sit there, like it could have been Togo, Francisco, and 98 lands, and it would have functioned exactly the same. But Togo Casket, so Casket is the other half of the deck, 3 mana, 1/3. It is a Phyrexian human artificer that can tap and sacrifice 3 other artifacts and or creatures to look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So he functionally draws 2 cards while throwing a third one into your graveyard for sacrificing 3 artifacts. So the goal here is to play things like you've got the best ones are like Zeldinch that lets you play an extra land every turn. Like you get, it is sort of it's like the Aesi's Wario deck, where you're trying to do the similar thing of allowing yourself to play extra lands. Poo Poo UFO is one of the best cards in the deck because you can tap it to put a land into play. The deck plays what's it called? I can never remember the name. Crucible of Worlds. That card name consistently confounds me. Play Crucible of Worlds to play lands from your graveyard. So you play fetch lands, you sacrifice them, you play them again from the graveyard. Now you've got like 4 landfall triggers a turn. You've made 4 rocks. You can sacrifice them to Casket. And then, like, man, when they started printing things like the Marionette Apprentice, Marionette Master is the way to win with this deck. Marionette Master, obviously, every time an artifact is put into a graveyard that you control, it's going to essentially deal 4 damage to somebody. So you just throw a ton of rocks down, and then you sacrifice all of them to God Eternal Bond 2, or something similar to that. I'm going to sacrifice my entire board, and you're going to lose 1 billion life from it. So it's just a sweet deck that can grind a bit by just being also a landfall kind of rampy deck, sacrificing them, filling your graveyard, keeping your hand full, and then going off on a turn with like Nahiri's Lithoforming or Hugh the Entwood. Like this is just one of the coolest decks that I've ever built. Like I said, I got a little lost in the plot. It went a little too artifact aristocracy for me. So I've wheeled it back as I moved a lot of those pieces over to the Reaper King No More deck, as that is a way better aristocrats deck than this ever was. I'm trying to get this back onto track to be an actual landfall deck that cares about lands.
That's so sick. Yeah. I've played against both of these versions of the deck as well. You know, I've played against Togo Casket, and like, granted, maybe a little bit slower, but it just is so a unique idea in turning land synergy into artifact synergy with a couple of just rando uncommon legendaries that partner up together. It was so unique. It's a very fun brew. For sure.
You could also, like, there's a world, it'd be a bad deck. There's a world where you could build it as a Pauper Commander because they're both uncommon legendaries. So you could play those and have like Togo Casket partner PEDH. But I would not recommend it because it requires things like Mirkwood Bats to work. But I guess Mirkwood Bats is a common. That's even better. Okay. Hold on a second now. It definitely requires like the Crucible of Worlds to really work, and it requires things like the Realm Breaker is another really great card in that deck because it gives you a landfall trigger from your opponent's library.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'd say for myself, because like for me, it's way tougher than you because like as we evolved as Commander Magic players over the years, there really became this split in dynamic where, and again, this is not a bad thing at you per se, but your philosophy when it comes to deck construction and brewing is just high synergy gas 100% of the time. Your brews, your things that you construct, you make sure that they flow with efficiency. They've got your highest quality grade as far as like what that deck is looking to do. You're not really the deck builder that divulges out into the janky strategies, the sort of weird and like stylized. And like,
I told you, I'm a sweaty little nerd.
Right. And so that makes me have to fall in line here with being able to construct. And again, you have played against pretty much everything I own in my catalog. So just like trying to pin down one to talk about right here, like I guess I'll briefly, in just like honorable mentions, like, you know how my Aloro has shifted so high over the years. You know what I mean? That deck originally started out as just, it's an Esper life gain deck. And then I started throwing a little bit of just like, oh, well, here's just a spicy little control card. And here's another fun little like interaction piece. And like that deck now is like a bracket 4 nightmare to play against.
It's awesome.
I very seldom lose with that deck. It is just so incredibly fun. But like all the other sort of like fantastic, fun synergy ideas, like where you focus in more on direct path to victory wins, I like focusing on sort of like established archetypes of decks. So like I own like 3 different types of Enchantress builds. You know, you've played against Shrines. I've got equipment with Mardu and Sir Gwen, Hero of Ashvale. Let's see, what else am I thinking of? Like just, you know what I mean? I almost actually even wanted to briefly talk about Myra the Magnificent as well.
Yes, I was hoping you were going to talk about Myra. That's my favorite deck of yours.
Oh, it is really? Yeah. Well, I have another one I'm going to dive into more briefly. I just wanted to honorable mention to that one as well, because just like it's Spell Slinger with just that unique twist of it, of doing the instants and sorceries attached to the attractions. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that deck
so
is very
sick.
fun. But I think for myself, in sort of thinking about everything that I own, the one that has had the most change, the greatest evolution, and I think unlike you, I think one of my favorites to play is my Gates deck.
Bro, it's so cool.
I stuck true to my roots of getting started playing the game right around that 2013, 2014 era, and just latching on to the types of cards who allow you to win in unconventional ways has just been a long time building philosophy of myself that I just enjoy. And so the Maze's End strategy of you're looking to try to get a whole bunch of these specific non-basic land types down into play. This has been a deck brew that has gone through many different iterations over the years. I was trying to even think of it on top of my head. I can't actually even tell you what my original 5-color commander was for this strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to say it was maybe Child of Alara, but don't quote me on that.
Because like Chromat, was it?
I don't think it was Chromat, but I know it had to be 5-color at the time. It was some 5-color legend from in and amongst that era. I couldn't tell you specifically what that was, because remember back then, Gates were only as prevalent as the Return to Ravnica block that featured them.
Yeah.
Over the years, as we have experienced new pieces of it, I guess specifically the Battle for Baldur's Gate Commander Legends set just basically was able to push this to a point where not only was the Gates strategy that you could put down and play viable, you could actually cut a color in its entirety. So like an original iteration of this was just straight up Sultai with Nine Fingers Keeney, who does still live in the deck as well. I would actually even argue is one of the main like lieutenant commanders of that deck, just because what of the strong ability that she does. But when I was able to grab myself a copy of Yidris Maelstrom Wielder, who is Grixis plus green, then I was like, okay, well, awesome. I can put the green-focused, land-centered cards and gates that are in this deck. Just in evaluation of it, there's just not a whole lot that white offers as far as gates is concerned. So Yidris made his way in here, and just like the philosophy that this deck is built around is that the commander himself granting Cascade to these land fetching cards allows you to get all of these gates out into play faster.
Yeah.
While still being like they're tapped lands. Technically speaking, it's why a why a big focus point of that deck is redundant pieces in that deck that either allow the non-basic lands to come in untapped, like Gond Gate or Tiller Engine or Spelunking, or other effects that can have the lands themselves become untapped, things like Kelpie Guide and Vizier of Tumbling Sands. Those types of cards are excellent in multiple aspects because the gates that come in tapped can become untapped from cards like those. They also allow you to immediately untap the Maze's End the turn that you play it, or be able to untap for extra mana cards like Baldur's Gate, the ones that can make extra mana past the 3. You know what I mean? Like tapping Baldur's Gate for 4, untapping it with a Kelpie Guide, and then activating it again for another 4. Genius.
We take those.
It's excellent. And yeah, so like the original concept of this was constructed up from the Battle for Baldur's Gate cards, plus the Return to Ravnica ones who cared about gates, and then it kind of got turbo mashed together with the Tricky Terrain precon for Modern Horizons 3, and that's kind of now the focus on sort of what that deck is trying to do. We're playing extra land drop synergy with those extra lands being gates, the means to tutor out Maze's End and ultimately make that potentially be our main win condition of the deck. And just like, it's awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like landfall is so tricky to actually have be fun instead of just doing the traditional bog standard stuff. And it's like, and there's nothing wrong with doing traditional landfall cards. It just, when you have an opportunity with non-basic styles like this kind of philosophy even extends to anyone who enjoys the other spectrum of like land types, like snow decks and deserts, or like, I don't know if there's anything live right now with like towns. Like I guess the Wandering Minstrel is something new from Final Fantasy that we don't really have like a
That's
towns
the biggest
deck
payoff
quite yet.
though, is the Wandering Minstrel.
But yeah, but like anybody else who has a deck of this caliber, if you've got lands that are like kind of changing their types around, or like you're playing lands that are these very fun, unique, non-basic styles, like this is one of my favorites to build. It's been one of my favorite constructions that I've ever done because I've truthfully never seen anybody else create a deck of this caliber. Like Gates decks exists, but they usually exist in that realm of 5-color or their like Sultai fast stuff, you know?
Yeah.
You don't get to see 4-color cascade landfall value. And that to me has been like one of my greatest building achievements over the last several years.
I just love that sometimes you're going to like Sylvan Scrying for a Rakdos Guildgate and win the game because of it. Like that's such a cool line of play. How fascinating that both of us have landed on landfall decks as our favorite decks that we've built. It's like rewarding you for eating your vegetables in Magic is like it turns the half of your deck that's normally like ignorable into, okay, I'm excited to top deck a land now. Like it increases the enjoyment of the game up to 100 of these cards are exciting to me now, you know? But
exactly.
I think that takes us to the end of this here, our 100th episode, speaking of 100 cards. John, this has been an absolute pleasure. I love reminiscing with you on our years of Magic, and I am looking forward to the next 15 years and the next 100 episodes with you here, buddy.
100 more cards, 100 more episodes.
Absolutely. Yes, I love it. Well, thank you everybody for being here once again. We have some very, very exciting stuff coming up. As we mentioned, our 2,000 subscriber landmark, as well as our 3-year anniversary is coming up here very soon. So stick around for those. We have some exciting giveaways planned. If you want to be the first to know about those, as a reminder, subscribe, get the notifications on, and join our Discord, all linked down below. You can check all of those out there. Thank you so much. If you want to get in touch with us, as I mentioned, Discord's the best way to do it, but you can also find us on Blue Sky at MTG Thoughtcast.bsky.social, or you can send us an email at mtgthoughtcast@gmail.com. Signing off for our 100th episode. Thank you guys so much for being here, and we'll see you so soon, right back on the MTG Thoughtcast.